This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, continuing my conversation with Laurence de Mello from Buenos Aires. Laurence has also done a great deal of research on the death of Dr. David Kelly, who was a UN weapons inspector found dead allegedly by a suicide after going public on aspects of the Iraq situation being exaggerated to justify war. This is another extremely important case, Laurence. You've been right on top of it.
Well, yes, let's give a little brief to the listeners. Dr. David Kelly was a British weapons expert scientist, and he was actually a weapons inspector. And one of the inspectors, in fact, he was the chief inspector that was sent to Iraq to investigate the weapons of mass destruction, supposedly that Saddam Hussein had. And at this time, this is when the British government were trying to find reason to sort of go and attack Saddam and invade Iraq. So they sent in the weapons inspectors, and Dr. David Kelly was the one that went in there and found and not found the information. He returned it back to his bosses. Now, on July the 18th, 2003, Dr. David Kelly was found dead, propped up on a tree near his home in Oxfordshire. And only hours before he was on the telephone, he had warned a friend that dark actors were working against him. So he was 59 years of age. His daughter was due to be married. He was a very loving father and husband. Very stable. Now, this is where I find it very, very difficult. Now, the day that happened, actually on that day, I was actually with my agent at a television network in London. And we had a meeting, funny enough, about the program that I was pitching, which was Conspiracy, Fact or Fiction. And as we left, there was a newspaper on the side, and we'd heard the news in the first press that day that David Kelly was dead. And he said to me, "So, Laurence, what do you think the latest conspiracy was?" And I looked at the paper and I said, "That man was murdered." And he sort of said, "Really?" Now, I'll tell you why. First of all, my first reason that stuck out at me, because the press that day, he was found in the early hours of the morning in July 2003. The press, when they went to print, now, when you find a body, if some celebrity, or he was sort of, not a celebrity, but he was known because he was an important weapons inspector, wouldn't it say, Iraq weapons inspector found dead? It wouldn't say, words to the effect of, driven to a desperate end, weapons inspector found dead. Now, what is driven to a desperate end implying here, James? They're trying to tell us that he killed himself. Now, the body's still warm. Why would a newspaper print on the front page that he committed suicide when he hadn't even been subjected to an investigation or an inquest or an autopsy? So that was my first. That was the first thing that pricked up my interest with the Dr. David Kelly thing, was the fact that already the press were pumping out, as we know, mind control, propaganda. He killed himself. Now, first of all, let's analyze the capacity of Dr. Kelly to kill himself. Now, he was found with a penknife by his side. He had slashed his wrist, and he had some oxycodone painkillers, 2 blisters of oxycodone painkillers with only 2 remaining. Now, first of all, you have to say, well, was he stable? Now, he must have been very stable, James, to be given this enormous task, responsible task to go into Iraq and investigate weapons and biological warfare, etc. So we know that his brain was in the right place. His mind was stable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have even been given that job. Secondly, he was a scientist. Would a scientist who was a specialist in biological chemicals, etc., kill himself with a penknife? I doubt it somehow. I think you'd make some sort of really wonderful concoction that even a cyanide capsule is going to be faster than a penknife. So he was found with a penknife. Now, of course, the police moved in. Now, there was also noted by witnesses that actually were first on the scene that Kelly, propped up by a tree, he had a trail of vomit from his nose and mouth leading in a straight line to his ear. So what else does that tell us? That tells us the body had been moved, and that vomit came out while he was lying on his back, because vomit, if you're sitting up, the vomit's going to come down your chin. It's not going to come from your nose at a 45-degree angle to your ear. So that was also a red flag on that. Very little blood. The first responders on the scene, the ambulance crew, said they could see hardly any blood. Now, very little blood. Now, if somebody's going to bleed out from a major artery loss, you're going to have a lot of blood, James. You're not going to have just a couple of patches on his jeans. So let's have a look at now what the analysis was on his actually injury. Now, they said that the injury was consistent with having been caused by a bladed object. They recovered the knife, which was a pen knife, and the coproximal tablets. Now, the amount of coproximal that he took, they said, was not sufficient to kill anybody. It might have knocked him out for a couple of hours, but it wouldn't have killed him. But a specialist in an arterial surgeon, he said that the wound, which was done to the ulnar artery. Now, the ulnar artery, it's a shame that we can't have a camera here, but if you put your wrist flat out in front of you, the ulnar artery is on the inside towards the body. It's not on the outside. Now, if somebody was going to slash their wrist, generally, somebody's in a state of distress, or they want to supposedly slash their wrist, you're going to cut, I imagine, if you're right-handed, from the outside left down across the wrist, down towards the body. Now, how would you be cutting from the inside up, hacking on the inside of the wrist? So that's first of all, that's one flag. Secondly, the ulnar artery is very deep inside the wrist. And it's been said that the ulnar artery is a relatively small artery. And although if it is completely cut across, it will bleed, but after you'll lose a couple of 100 mils of blood, but after several minutes, it will stop bleeding. It will stop. And also, the temperatures were very low. It was cold in the morning. They said that the temperature that day was quite low. So there were all sort of aspects that there was no way that man could have bled to death from the incision that he had made to his ulnar artery, if he did do that. So that's where we are. Now, we know what happened with Kelly, because what happened, we have to backtrack here. When Kelly came back from Iraq and he gave the information to his superiors about what they hadn't found, and he made it very clear that there were no weapons of mass destruction. Now, we have to be careful when we use the term weapons of mass destruction, because what springs to mind and what was used as weapons of mass destruction to persuade the public that we were at risk of being bombed in London, you're talking, I would say, warheads. What would you say about that? What would you say that would be risk to us in London from Iraq? But are you still there, James?
Yeah, sure, of course.
You're still there, sorry. Every so often you have to do a grunt, because otherwise I don't well, don't grunt.
No, I'm just fascinated by everything you have to say. I think this is wonderful.
Okay, so the thing is, the analysis was that when we talk about weapons of mass destruction, the weapons that Saddam had immediate access to were weapons that are used in a local war zone. So yes, he certainly had nasty weapons, mustard gases and whatever, that he was using on his own population. But he did not have anything that threatened anybody outside of the Iraq territory unless they were taken there by terrorists. So when we had this comment that there was a 45-minute window or something, that he was supposedly going to push a button and we were all going to be blown up like they used to do in Thunderbirds, it was not true. So Kelly came back to the UK and he gave the information to his superiors. And then, of course, we have the Blair government with the sexed up documents, which refers to the document that was put before Parliament to suggest that we had reason to invade a foreign nation, which was Iran. Now, when this paper was first released, these documents that were released to the cabinet, Kelly was aware of this, and he was very concerned because he said, hold on a minute, my information does not match up with what they're putting in this document to put to Parliament that we should have a war with Iraq. So he was very concerned. He confided this in lots of his colleagues. I'm not happy about this. This is not good. So what happens? He decided somebody put him in touch with a brilliant journalist who was actually working for BBC then, Andrew Gilligan. Now, Andrew Gilligan had a meeting with Kelly, and he revealed to him that he was very concerned that the documents were sexed up specifically for the motive to incite justification for war against Iraq and an invasion. So he revealed this information to Gilligan, and Gilligan used Kelly as his source, and he revealed it through his media means, through the BBC. Well, of course, all hell broke loose. The government went absolutely ballistic, and there was a major witch hunt to Gilligan. There was pressure put on the BBC. The BBC get lots of things wrong, a lot of things wrong. But there are a lot of very good journalists in there trying to do their job. And they were witch hunted to say, we want to know who the source was for Andrew Gilligan's report on the sexed up Iraq dossier. Now, this is really unusual because this is the sort of thing that would happen in Cold War Russia, where the government would control. And I mean, it's unheard of, James. I mean, it probably happened in the McCarthy trials. It's unheard of that journalists, reputable journalists, have to reveal their sources by an act of government. I mean, what is this? What's going on here? So he was coerced into revealing the name, and Kelly was then witch hunted. He was threatened, and he was brought before a commission in London and questioned by a panel about his information. Now, this is where the things get sort of dark and creepy. Now, he revealed in an email even, there's an email, that he actually revealed that he would probably be found dead in the woods. Now, it's interesting because Diana also said that she'd probably be found dead in a car or go up in a helicopter. And he revealed to various friends that he felt that he was being hunted. Now, my personal belief is the reason that he was assassinated was because I believe he was ready to call a press conference, because he was absolutely furious and very distressed about the dossier. And there is why would he kill himself? Why would, this man is used to pressure, James. This is, I mean, weapons experts, they have to, I mean, when they go over there, it's not all hunky-dory. They're not just going on a day out checking the stuff. You know, there's a lot of risks involved. You're dealing with a lot of dangerous stuff. You're dealing with a lot of dangerous people. So people that do that sort of job that Kelly did were very well, very capable of acting under pressure. So why would he kill himself because he's being witch hunted? They suggest that he couldn't take the pressure and he killed himself. You're not going to kill yourself for that. He was going to come out. It defeats the object to kill yourself. So,
well, it's precisely what we discussed before, Laurence, about if you have information, making it public is the best way to ensure your safety. He was on the verge of revealing it. That was when he was at maximal danger.
I'm absolutely certain of that. And that's why now it's very interesting. And I noticed the day that Kelly was found dead, Tony Blair, very conveniently, was on a transatlantic flight to the United States of America. So he was technically incommunicado. Now, normally with something like that would happen, if Blair was on the ground, what would have happened was it would have blown up in the news, it would have been front page news, and the Prime Minister would generally have to come out, maybe, or somebody would come out of number 10 and make a press release. Blair was not available, which I found very convenient that he had that long
Yes,
flight.
all too convenient. It implies that he was in the know and may have even initiated the assassination plot.
Well, I have to say, I think, as I say, there are good and bad everywhere, and this is why we cannot sort of paint and tar everybody with a brush. Everybody in the government is corrupt. Everybody in the royal family is corrupt. Everybody in the American administration is corrupt, because it's not true. It's a small minority. It's a very, very small, powerful minority. And I, in my heart, believe that Blair was absolutely complicit with, well, we know what he did with Iraq. We know he had no reason to go in there. And of course, look what happened with the Chilcot inquiry. Now, you know there was a Chilcot inquiry afterwards about the justification for war. It was a very big inquiry. It was supposedly a public inquest. Now, a public inquiry. Now, a public inquiry in the United Kingdom is an inquiry that is given by the government. It's financed by the government at the behest of the public, and it's where the public or anybody, interested parties, can present documents, evidence, questions, and that inquiry is constructed to answer those questions, and all the evidence that is participant in that inquiry is supposed to be for public analysis. Now, the Chilcot inquiry, which was supposed to be the public inquiry for whether Tony Blair was justified or not, or if he was breaking the law, etc. I mean, the United States government sent a memo to the British that they were not allowed to reveal vital information to that inquiry, which were communications between Bush and Blair about Iraq, pre-Iraq invasion. Now, what is the point of having an inquiry if you cannot look at those documents? They said it's highly classified. Why is it so classified? What could be so secretive about these conversations between Blair and Bush about that could be, you know, they always use this, James, a risk to national security. Where is the risk? It's done. So where is the risk? You're not going to invade Iraq again. So tell us what the conversation was. But of course, all of that was buried. So, you know, it's so, you get to the point, it's so frustrating because I find now more and more and more. Years ago we had, I mean, the Kennedy assassination was a conspiracy that stood up for such a long time, and they talk about the moon, did we go to the moon? But now we have, they're cropping up every few months, James. Every few months there's something else, there's something else, there's something else. And, you know, we can't get close to this. So Kelly was certainly got rid of. His family went very, very quiet afterwards. And I never sort of pushed it to try and contact the family out of respect for the family, because obviously, and also they were certainly being monitored. And they just went away very, very quietly, unlike Mohammed al-Fayed in the case of...
I'm quite sure they were advised that if they made anything of this, they'd be next on the list.
Of course. Now, here's another reason that I don't believe that man would have killed himself, apart from the dynamics of the death and the way he killed himself. That man adored his family. Now, if you kill yourself for insurance in the United Kingdom, you lose your insurance policy. You lose it. Now, it's been suggested in the findings of the Kelly investigation that the official story is that he killed himself because he felt that he was due to go before a Foreign Affairs committee and be grilled, and that he was at risk of losing his pension. Now let's compare the two. He's worried about losing his pension. This is a weapons expert. Think how many books he could have written, James. So they're suggesting that he killed himself because he was going to lose his pension, because he was in breach of the Official Secrets Act, possibly, and he would no longer have been able to finance his family or pay for his daughter's wedding. So he kills himself, which avoids his life insurance, so his family would have been left with nothing, because you don't get life insurance if you kill yourself. So these are blatant, very, very simple, what can I say? That it's
simple rationale
obvious
for him to not kill himself, because then the family loses all the insurance. I mean, it's ridiculous. All the motives are on the other side.
Exactly. So there he was. So Kelly went, and this is another reason I believe. I'm an old school girl, and I have a great belief in sort of sodium pentothal and means of extracting information by sort of force, as in, you know, lie detector tests, etc. It would be bloody marvellous if somebody made a citizen's arrest to the players that were involved with the invasion of Iraq, etc., and get them down and videotape them and have them in a situation where they couldn't but not help but tell the truth. So unless we have that, James, we are never going to get to this. it's too complicated. There are too many layers, and you can't get past them. And the only thing that we can do is try and make the public more aware, because the more the public are aware of the dynamics of these events, such as Kelly, such as Kelly, etc. The public then can request for further investigations. Now, recently it's been told that last year somebody has come forward and information has been given to Scotland Yard that there are new witnesses about the Diana death, and they are actually currently investigating at the moment. And it's a soldier that's come forward and said that, well, it's the parents-in-law of the soldier that said that he knew that there was something, that Diana was actually killed by MI6, and there were British forces involved. So there is new stuff coming out. As I said, there's new things coming out now that they say that James Anderson, the Russian intelligence organization, briefed this Russian author that Anderson was not just found dead in the car. He actually had 2 bullet wounds to the front of his skull. So slowly, there are things coming out. But the Kelly affair. Now, when the Kelly, the result of the investigation to Kelly was that he actually committed suicide, took his own life. Now, it's been said now, there was a law passed that the documents to the Kelly investigation have been buried now for 70 years. And even Scotland Yard are not allowed to reopen the case. Unless you can only open cases if something really significant comes up. So obviously they thought they've covered all their tracks, got rid of all the dirty laundry, they've buried everything, so nothing's coming out. Now we bury it for 70 years. So let's see now if anything new is going to come out about Kelly. But 70 years to sit on a file is interesting, isn't it? Why would you sit on the file of the suicide of a weapons expert?
Well, it's so like the Warren Commission classifying the documents and records that it allegedly based its research on for 75 years. That's the average lifespan of an American. It would be guaranteeing that those documents wouldn't be released until everyone who was alive at the time was dead. That was circumvented by Oliver Stone's film, which generated such a resurgence of interest in the case that Congress passed a JFK Records Act that led to the formation of the Assassination Records Review Board, a 5-person civilian panel entrusted with the authority to declassify documents and records from the CIA, the FBI, the Secret Service, and so forth. They actually succeeded in declassifying some 60,000 documents, Laurence, millions of pages that have contributed to a lot of nooks and crannies in understanding what happened, especially the way the cover-up was carried out. So it's very clear they are modeling themselves on the Warren Commission to bury a case. They don't want to be exposed to public scrutiny.
So what do we do? As I say, the only thing that we can do, and we have to be careful how we do it. We have to be very careful, and I do get impatient with a lot. There are so many good kids out there today, and you know yourself because you're part of the Truth Network, and we've got all these truth warriors, which I am absolutely supportive of. I'm not supportive of violence. I'm not supportive of a lot of the ways that they're going about things, obstructing things or sabotaging. It's the wrong way to do it. We have to do it by abiding by the law as much as we can. There are laws coming out every day now that you can't. I mean, I sent an article to a newspaper only 3 days ago that they were looking. They sent a wish list, and they said to me, "No, we can't publish this. Why not?" Well, there is a law now that we can't mention any names because this name and this, what's happened to us. Yeah. So, as I say, there are laws being turned every day, which, I say, oh my God, let's just publish it, let's just do it.
More and more, the vice of the national security state, it tightens its grip. We have to take our final break. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my wonderful guest from Buenos Aires, Laurence de Mello. We've been discussing Princess Diana and now Dr. David Kelly. And when we return, don't be surprised if you hear things you haven't heard before about Martin Bormann. We'll be right back.